afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock, and we don't want to punish anybody who's here on time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Kathy Hall. I'm a community member. I've been a school board member. I know a number of you by sight and have worked close with some of you as well. I'm going to get things kicked off this afternoon and then kind of orchestrate the speakers. Many of you have participated with us in what we used to call the Longmont Early Childhood Community Coalition, and that's part of the reason that you got an invitation for today. And we used to get together in person once a month before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and we continued, a group of us, about 15 strong, core team members, have continued discussions and activities since that point in time. There's been a lot of work focused on early childhood issues and how to address them. We're here today to help everybody get up to speed on what we have been doing and what we are hoping to do in the future. I've got a couple of housekeeping things. First, each of you has a one-pager at your seat. We also sent those out electronically with the invitation, but that covers some of the highlights that we're going to talk about today, but certainly not everything. Secondly, if you haven't guessed, we're being taped, so be on your best behavior if you're going to ask a question or something later on. Third, we're going to send a sign-up sheet around, and we would love to know that you were here. If you would like to stay in touch with us, put your email address down, and we will keep you posted. We will also, we will be sending out a small survey that would give you an opportunity to say how you might like to be involved with us in the next 9 months. And let's see, on my checkoff list here, at the end we will have time for Q&A. So if you have a question, keep it, and we'll call on you at that point. We don't want to interrupt because we'd like to get through all of our material, which may answer some of the questions that you have. We're going to start off today with a 2-minute video that the Children's Funding Project has prepared, and what it talks about are special districts related to early childhood development. And Matt is going to turn that on, and again, it's only 2 minutes long, but I think it'll give you some background that might be helpful.
All across the country, everyone, whether you live in a small town or a big city, wants to live in a strong and vibrant community. The only way to do this is to ensure that our community's children have a strong start in life. Since 1946, through good times and bad, communities across the country have created voter-approved children's funds to secure the best possible outcomes for their kids and pick up where federal and state funds fall short. A voter-approved children's fund is tax revenue that voters decide must be spent on services for children. These funds identify their community's needs and pay for a variety of services that children receive outside of the K-12 school day, such as programs for babies and toddlers, child care, preschool education, after-school programs, and mental health support. Local communities maintain 50 voter-approved children's funds across 11 states that generate $1.5 billion annually for kids. These programs receive wide support from all sorts of people: mayors, business leaders, faith leaders, law enforcement, child care providers, and families have all championed voter-approved children's funds. And they work. Communities with voter-approved children's funds see positive impacts on infant development, kindergarten readiness, high school graduation rates, children's behavioral health, lower youth violent crime rates, and higher youth employment. Voter-approved children's funds are also good for business and the economy. The services they fund create jobs, increase home values, and prepare children to get the most out of public education. Children's funds can help our communities build a resilient and diverse network of services that lead to positive long-term outcomes for our kids. Are you ready to create a children's fund in your community? Visit childrensfundingproject.org/childrens-funds to learn how.
not here as a political campaign, but we're here to get you more informed about the kind of work that we've been doing. Okay.
It's a different meeting than singing to the choir.
That's right.
It's a good intro.
As you can see, we're not techies. Thanks, man. I'm going to introduce the speakers for today, and they're going to talk to you about some of the things that you saw in the video, but to give you some background on the kind of work that the Early Childhood Alliance has been doing. It's been my pleasure to work with all of these people that are going to speak today. They have taken a lot of their personal time to work on this project. You may know some of them from other things that they do in the community, but they have really focused on this effort for the last 3 years very, very seriously, and it's been my pleasure to work with them. Matt Eldridge is going to be our first speaker, and you might know Matt from the TLC Learning Center. Sarah Sharp is an active community member, and you may have seen her at Coffee with the Council. And Tim Waters, who you may know from the Longmont City Council. But again, this is an effort that they have taken on as community members to really focus on what we can do for our youngest citizens. So Matt, I'm going to have you give it a start.
Super. Thanks, Kathy, and thank you all for being here today. I feel like I'm in church. There's nobody in the front row except the media. But thank you for being here. It certainly is a pleasure to be able to represent our youngest residents in Longmont and Boulder County. My name is Matt Eldred. I'm the Executive Director at TLC Learning Center. I'm also a community member of this coalition alliance that have really been active since 2018, meeting in one of our members' living rooms, talking about what do we need to make sure that every child has what they need to succeed by the time they reach the kindergarten door. And so what you're going to hear today are things around birth to 5. We just watched a little video around the country of voter-approved funding initiatives, and they look different in different communities. So we're really excited to be able to share a little bit about the education process and hopefully about where we're going moving forward. And so this group, again, started convening around 2018. 2019, the city of Longmont put this in their action plan for early childhood, and there was a mayor's summit that brought together providers, parents, the community to really talk about where are our children and addressing that unmet need of how do we make sure that every child gets what they need when they get to kindergarten. In 2021, we had the governor come and talk about early childhood from the state level, and we had business leaders, and so that was a really exciting event. It was planned for the end of March 2020. That was our plan. We pushed it off about a year and a half. And so I think I do things by time on pre-pandemic and post-pandemic now. Do you guys kind of operate that way? I used to remember when a few years ago, and now it's pre-COVID or after COVID. And the mayor, the governor came in October of 2021. But the Alliance has really been focused around where are our children and how do we make sure that everybody has what they need to succeed. As Kathy mentioned, we started as a kind of a grassroots group in Longmont. We quickly realized that we are a community that travels. And so we have families that come from Frederick Firestone into Longmont. We have families that go from Longmont to Boulder and vice versa. And so we've really expanded our focus, and what you're going to hear today are really about, while it's not in conjunction with the school districts, it's the school district boundaries of the St. Vrain and the Boulder Valley School District. So if you kind of outline on your map, you'll see that the Boulder County parts of St. Vrain and Boulder Valley School District, and we actually go into Weld County in the St. Vrain Valley School District. Do you know that Boulder Valley and St. Vrain actually bleed into 5 counties? So we actually are in 5 different counties around Boulder County, and so we'll be talking a little bit about that today and the initiative about why that boundary. But we really quickly learned that we are a community that is active and moving, and so just to have a Longmont focus leaves out a group. And we realize that whatever boundary we pick is going to leave somebody on the other side of the boundary, right? And so we know that what we're taking is a first step in hopefully approved initiative that would be able to bring in funding to a local community for early childhood services. And so our alliance is dedicated to ensuring these following things, and we've been talking about these as kind of our North Star, making sure that every child is nurtured from birth through, and so they're school ready, and so birth to 5 when they enter kindergarten, ready and prepared to learn. Child care and early childhood education is valued as a public good, and that may be a new term for you, of child care, public good. We typically think of public good as roads and fire stations and public services and wastewater management. What about early childhood being a public good as we value our fire departments and even our wastewater? Wouldn't that be revolutionary if our children were valued that way? So we're going to talk about that. Seamless system, there are a lot of moving parts, and if you're not an early childhood person, I will do my best to not use acronyms, but we have a lot of systems through our state system, our school district system, other funding sources, government agencies, local nonprofits that have their own funding sources, parents paying fees for services, etc. All of those funding sources and systems are not always coordinated very well, believe it or not. There's some fragmentation between our systems. I would love it if I knew where every TLC child was when they entered 8th grade. I don't necessarily get to know that because there's some disconnect. When we hand a child off, we give them to the next group to do the education and therapeutic services pieces. And so better coordinating services has been one of our goals. How can we do better at a seamless approach of birth to 5, in particular our youngest children, birth to 3. And parents and children and early childhood providers have the settings and the resources they need to provide what they need for children. And so some of that has to do with resources, books, materials, classroom setup, things like that. And again, when we're talking about all children, it's not just children at TLC Learning Center, a licensed 66-year-old provider. But what about grandma who has 3 children? What about the neighbor who's taking care of a child? They need resources as well. And so when we talk about all children, we're talking about all children in all settings. And so we want to make sure that all parents, child care providers, and caregivers have the resources they need. And so that's why we're here today, to share with you about hopefully a plan, a regional approach to funding these kinds of initiatives. So that is the background about the Alliance and where we are. If you are an Alliance member that has drug through COVID on Zoom, would you just raise your hand if you've been a part of this? I know Jenny's here, Gloria. So these are the people, keep your hands raised for a moment. When you have questions, this is the group that we're going to look to answer. So I just appreciate the coalition that have stuck with this, have really said, I'm going to do this even though times are tough. We've found ways to stay together, to communicate, and continue to move forward this initiative. So I just want to recognize those that are in the room that have been a part of what we're calling the Network Management Team, or NMT, that have kept the work going. But you're here today to be a part of this as well, and so I'm going to let Tim talk a little bit about the numbers and the why we are here, and we will go from there and look forward to your questions here in a few moments. So Tim, tell us what we need to know and why we're here.
And let me just add my thanks to everybody who's here, that you would take time out of your Friday afternoon. Says something about you. Hopefully we'll make this worth your time. Huh? What did I say? We had a late council meeting last night. You can read about it in today's Times Call. It's Wednesday afternoon. Thanks. Take time out of your Wednesday afternoon. So the video you saw a little bit ago is produced by the Children's Funding Project, which Kathy mentioned. Let me just add to this. The Children's Funding Project, I think they're headquartered in New Jersey. They work with groups like ours across the country, around the country, who are focused on how to solve a challenge that is pervasive in every community in the United States and in many around the world, but the United States in particular. Worse here in a lot of places around the world because of our failure to invest in our youngest residents. So the Children's Funding Project has successfully worked with some of the groups that you saw, the dots that showed up on that map, to help get groups like ours across the finish line for what they're trying to accomplish. And we became aware of them, and we applied to be one of the cohorts with which they would work, and we were accepted as a cohort. We're one of 8 groups in the country that are working with the Children's Funding Project. The video, which is public domain, was made available for groups like ours who are trying to, move the dial on something and educate folks. So just hold that thought. Secondly, I think the little technology glitch here with the video and then the music afterwards was a perfect metaphor for, I suspect, what we're doing today, and that is preaching to the choir, right? In the background, our choir was singing for us. I suspect you didn't come today if you aren't seriously interested and concerned about this. So maybe the best we can hope for today. We're not here to change anybody's minds. We would like to make certain you leave here well informed. But most important is that you carry this conversation into whatever circles, congregations, HOA meetings, wherever you are, your service clubs. Carry this conversation with you and say, are you aware of what's going on? You can tell we're producing, I hope, some high quality, high production value video from this session. We thought if we're going to do this, it'd be a missed opportunity if we didn't take advantage of this experience to get a way to capture the message and share it on public access television, on your social media platforms, wherever you're connected. So if you're willing to do that, we'll get the link to this out, and I'm certain some of our brilliant young volunteers at Longmont Public Media will edit it down to make it real consumable. So my role here is to talk about numbers. And on the one pager, if you turn, I guess it's on the front page, you see early childhood by the numbers. And I don't need to drill down on a lot of those, they're right there for you. But here are some highlights that I think would be a shame to miss. Before the pandemic, and Matt's right, we've marked this whole experience from pre to post-pandemic. And in the event that Matt was referring to when we had the governor scheduled to come, it was actually scheduled for March 13th. Remember what date everything shut down? March 16th, right? Well, the governor said, I can't get there on the 13th, but I can come on the 27th. So we were scheduled for a big event in the museum on March 27th, 2020. Well, obviously that didn't happen. But the reason we were trying to bring, actually the primary audience for that were business people, large and small business owners or employers. Because we thought the big challenge would be to make the case with the business community why they ought to be willing to lean in, step up, and invest more of their treasure in early childhood solutions. We didn't know what the solution might be at that time, just we needed their engagement. Between March 27th, 2020 and September 2021, when we actually did have the governor and a group of business folks and providers and others in the museum, the pandemic helped make the case. There was no longer a question about the relationship between childcare and a thriving local economy and stability of our workforce. And today, in Colorado, when we read 2 jobs for every person, right? Part of that is a result of women and men, but oftentimes women out of the workforce. Because we find ourselves in a place where over the last 15 years, the number of licensed and unlicensed providers in Colorado on a steady decline. To the point where today, we are at least 40% short of being able to return to pre-pandemic levels in terms of our capacity to provide. With that, for every child in Colorado, at least in this area, in a licensed child care setting, there were 3 kids waiting to get in, or 3 slots parents were hoping would open up, right? 1 out of every 4 kids eligible actually had a place to be. Now, the rest of those kids might have been someplace, we just don't know where they were. We don't know if they were in programs with family, friends, and neighbors who were trained to do what those kids needed to be well prepared for kindergarten. But we're pretty certain that if we want every child in Boulder County to be school ready when they show up at the kindergarten door, we better be real clear on where that other 60% of the kids are, right? So that no kid is left out on his or her path to the classroom, right? What we know, the consequences of kids showing up unprepared are staggering in terms of how the school district uses its resources. You could rethink Title I, special education. All the money we spend on remediation could be spent in other ways, or most of it, if every child showed up school ready as a 5-year-old. And largely what this whole initiative is about. Workforce stability is part of it, but at the core, it's making certain long-term we have kids ready when they hit the classroom door. The returns on the investment are equally staggering. If you remember some of you may remember the Perry Preschool study from the late, I guess, the mid-'80s, right? I was working for a governor when that came out, and we used it a lot at the time. But the returns on every dollar invested then, in terms of lifetime returns, was like 17 to 1. It reduced incarceration costs, healthcare costs, housing costs, lifetime earnings for folks who finish their educations because of how they get started. So on an education side, on an economic side, there are no losers if we make the kinds of investments we have to make in this initiative. So one or two last thoughts and then I'll sit down. One of the groups that's leaned in hard on this initiative is American Association of University of Women. We have a whole contingent here today. We wouldn't be where we are today in spite of the good work of our practitioners and providers in the area. We simply wouldn't be in this conversation today without them. If you've been reading the series of editorials that Cheryl and Marty and Sarah have been producing for the TC line over the last, 6 or 8 months, one of them that they wrote just recently really addressed the relationship between workforce stability, economics, and childcare. And one of the conclusions in one of the articles that I think, Cheryl, you found the data, is that we have $1 trillion missing from our economy today in America because of the number of women who can't be in the workforce who would like to and be contributing to the local economy, to the prosperity of their families, because they're on the sidelines, because there's no place for their kids to go. And there's not a parent or an employer in America who didn't confront that real time during the pandemic. So a lot of numbers, economic, individual kids, returns on investment. But we're going to talk with you about why we think we're close to a regional solution to a problem that just has to be solved. And I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. Alcorn Sharp is one of our AAUW colleagues, and she and I have been working real hard on some of these things together, so take it away.
I'm excited about this project. The reason is I'm a former registered nurse, I'm a former health planner, and I'm a retired attorney. And so I've had a lot of background in child care issues. We know, this is not rocket science. Everywhere you look in this community, there is a need. We have great services. There we have Imagine, we have mental health partners. All of them are dependent on grants and a variety of sources. We would like to have a dedicated funding source so that we know the community, we know what's needed, and we can work to support it. As I think Tim said, we know that there are, and it's a really big if, all of our licensed facilities are fully functioning, we could take care of 40% of the children. There are 20,000 children in the service area, the proposed service area, and we could take care of 40%. Now that if those facilities can be fully functioning, which now a lot of them can't because they don't have the workers, the child care workers to keep the facilities open. And so what we would do is we would try in a number of ways to support them, and I'll just read. We would do this by establishing a grants program to support early care and education providers in obtaining and maintaining a state child care license, in increasing, renovating, or improving education facilities, in acquiring equipment and learning materials, in supporting workforce development and retention efforts, and in meeting standards through voluntary participation in the district quality assurance process. We know that we are desperately short of child care workers, and one of the things is wages. People can't, now there are opportunities for them to move into fast food production rather than working with the children. For a number of years, I worked with the Social Security Department, and I always found it deplorable when people would come in and they would say to the judges, I can't find a job. And the judge, until they were enlightened, would say, well, there are child care opportunities. You can go get a job in child care. What a pitiful thing for us as a country to be saying that what we need here are the most qualified workers for our babies, not somebody who can't find a job anywhere else. Navigation services, people call it a variety of different things. Tim's organization, Head Start, the Hour Center have navigators. And what this means is that they can help the people that they serve find the programs that they are entitled to and where to go to get this service and that service. What we find is with the 60% that are not in licensed care, a lot of those people are being left out. And one of the biggest issues is language. We have a really vibrant, dynamic community. In Longmont, we have 39% of our population is minority. They don't all speak English. We need to be providing services in a variety of English, certainly Spanish, because a fourth of our citizens are Hispanic. And Mile High United Way just did a survey of family, friends, and neighbors. These are the people who are caring for the children who are not in licensed care. And a lot of them said, we don't know where to go. CPAP, the state service that provides funding, apparently only has their information in English. We've got to do better, and we can do better if we have a central place and we understand our community and what needs to be done. We want to establish a grants program and work with local health providers to provide early childhood mental health services, child nutrition programs, screening and early intervention services, and other health-related programs authorized by the board for the benefit of the young children. I just read something from the American Bar Association they did a survey, and they found that in 2025, the United States will be 10,000 mental health workers short. 10,000. And a lot of those, we have learned by interviewing some of the people in the field, will be in this special age group, the 0 to 5, because not only do you have to know all of the mental health things, but you also have to know all the developmental stages that children go through. So I think there are very few people who say that we don't need mental health services in today's society. And to think that our most vulnerable, again, would be without services is hard to believe. Also, one of the reasons that I got involved with this project is I read that Colorado narrowed its eligibility for developmental disabled delayed children. It used to be if you were 25% delayed, you got services. Now you have to be 33% disabled before you get services. I had to read that figure twice. I thought, this is Colorado, this is Boulder County. Surely this cannot be what we are doing, but it was. You can't blame the Department of Early Intervention. They got their funding cut. We cut the funding for our most vulnerable children. This is appallable to me, and I hope it is to you also. Nutrition services. It's in the news right now that it's in front of the House. They want to cut SNAP services. Well, they increased the amount of money for food during the pandemic. That just went by the wayside. It ended. And now some of the families were $100. They lost $100 a month in support for food services. Now there are people who are trying to cut that even further. Certainly we should be able to provide food for our children. It's appalling that we can't. We want parents to be able to send their children wherever they want to send them, but we really must do much more for the 60%. And we can, and if we have this dedicated funding, then we can figure out ways to go out and support them. So I hope that you will be as enthusiastic as I am about this, because we need all the help we can to help our youngest citizens. Thank you.
And so here's how we've concluded we're going to approach a solution. We have lamented over and over again about what the deficits are between current available resources, funding, and the needs in this county. And in fact, we hired a data scientist to do some research on what's the total number of kids involved in this county, what are the costs associated with their experiences, how much money comes into this county through the state office, through Head Start, through CCAP programs. And here's what we've learned. For the current levels of participation in early childhood, in child care and early childhood education programs in Boulder County, the estimated cost of those services is $104 million. The total number of dollars coming into this county from all sources to support the education of those kids is approximately $32 million. You've got a $72 million unmet need. If we were to fund, with state or federal resources, if we were to fund the cost of just the current levels of participation with the current business model. So if you want to grow the participation and you want to build a workforce that is actually a group of people who earn a living wage, the unmet need is actually substantially larger than $72 million. And we're not going to fill that unmet need. But we have danced around all the ways we might do this, thinking about grant programs and waiting for the federal government to come up with a solution, or thinking that surely the new universal pre-K program would be the solution. Well, universal pre-K is necessary and insufficient to what needs to be done. All right, it's a part of a solution. But we simply could not look around and see a solution on the horizons anywhere other than what we might create for ourselves. And so we concluded, consistent with what you saw in this video, that we would become one of those groups that starts to advance the cause of creating a special service district that is coterminous with the St. Vrain Valley and Boulder Valley School District boundaries, right? So I'm not here advocating for it, I'm telling you what we're advancing. Today, we have submitted through our attorney a service plan to both Weld County, for that part of Weld County that's in the St. Vrain Valley School District, and for all of Boulder County. We've submitted service plans to the attorneys in both counties. We've had informal conversations with the commissioners in both counties. We have been notified that we are likely going to have a hearing with the Weld County commissioners on May 24th. We're waiting to hear back from Boulder County, who will review what we've submitted as a service plan. The service plan, if approved by county commissioners, would be the first step in creating a new unit of government, a special service district. Now, my wife would signal me to say, make certain you explain the difference between a metro district and a special service district, which I will do in just a moment. Service districts in Colorado existed to address a number of needs. Fire districts, water districts, recreation districts. The amenities and services oftentimes are created and funded through special districts. It is a way to finance a number of things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to finance. In this case, in 2019, the state legislature added to the list of topics or reasons to create special districts in Colorado, early childhood as a service district. And we've seized on that opportunity. There are none that exist in Colorado. If we get this across the finish line, it'll be the first in Colorado that's been created. It would become a new unit of government, governed by people just like who govern a school board, be elected by the public. They are not developers running a metro district. They are just like the people in this room, trying to manage the revenues that would come into a special district to get that money moved into the field. Primary role and mission, as we've envisioned of a special district, would be as a portfolio manager. No intent to compete with the providers, but to grow the field of providers, to build a workforce, to grow capacity in this county, to make certain we can accommodate every student that resides within the service area. We have written into a service plan, and what we will propose to county commissioners is to increase mill levies over a phased-in 3-year period of time, increase property taxes by 5 mills. 2 mills in year 1, 1 mill in year 2, and 2 mills in year 3, which would end up netting or generating, top line, about $60 million a year, net of expenses to run a district like that somewhere between $50 and $55 million of new revenue available to fill some of that $72 million gap in Colorado. Now, you and others will say, are you nuts? Are you going to go to the public and ask for people to vote to increase their mill levy? And my answer is, yep, we're going to do that. The answer is, why would you think this is a good year to go to the public and ask for an increase in a mill levy? And my response would be to say, just tell me the good year to do it, and we'll do it in that year, right? But our conclusion, none of us are neophytes in this. We've been in this game for a long time, whether it's in the education business or in the political side of this, and realize there's no perfect year. And this may be the worst year ever. If it is, we hope that somebody's going to pick up this ball and run with it again in the out years, because it's not a race that's going to be finished just in 2023. But it is where we are. It is what we're proposing on the one pager that you got. If you flip it over, you see the map of Boulder County, that part of Boulder County that's the St. Vrain Valley School District, that part of the county that's of the Boulder Valley School District that's in Boulder County, and that part of the St. Vrain Valley District that's in Weld County, right? So those are the parts of those two school districts. Matt mentioned earlier that Gilpin County, Broomfield County, Larimer County, there are little slices of those counties that are also in those school districts. We've been asked, well, why wouldn't you go to all those counties? And the answer is because it takes the same time, effort, and bandwidth to clear the legal hurdles in every county. To try to get it through 5 or 6 counties is simply beyond our capacity. If we can get it done in 2 counties, much easier to join a service district than to create one. So our proposal is to go to the public and say, this is where we're headed. First, we're going to go to the county commissioners. We've got to clear a hurdle with the courts. If the county commissioners say, we'll approve your service plan, then we have to get a judge to say, you've got enough support to put this on a ballot. And then at that point in time, our message would be less educating and more advocating. But today, we just want you to know where we are. Is that good? I'm out of time?
Don't forget it. So I just want to piggyback off of what Tim said and let this sink in for a moment. 5 mill levy early childhood special district ballot initiative, if passed in November, what that means to homeowner in Longmont, $35 per $100,000. That's what a 5 mill generates. And again, as Tim said, this is going to be a phased in process, 2 mills, 3 mills, 5 mills. So over the course of 5 years, at the 5-year point, $100,000 is around $35. A $600,000 home is about a $210 investment in early childhood per homeowner. So that's what we're proposing. And I can let you talk amongst yourself about what is the value of children and is $200 a year worth it or not. But in total, it would be around $59 million at a 5 mill levy that this would generate. So on your one pager, you've got some boxes at the bottom about why is it important to invest, and what I'm hopeful at the end you'll look at is the blue box about advantages of this approach. Why not just wait for the state to do this, or federal government, or fill in the unit of government? If we do this in the service district of Boulder and Weld County, long-term dedicated funding would support children in this service district. Regional funding would support the goals of school readiness and the things that Sarah outlined. Those would be charged to the board to say, invest this money in these ways, and that's in our service plan that we've submitted to both Weld and Boulder County. And I think the biggest thing is the local control of those funds to be able to meet the needs of what is happening in our communities. It may be changing. There may be more friends and family neighbors, or if I'm looking through this room and not to judge anyone, we may have more grandparents in this community serving as caregivers for grandchildren who need the same resources that licensed providers and other folks have. So we need programs that reach those kinds of folks as well. Having local control gives us the ability to do that. And so those are the advantages, as well as some of the investments and returns and all of the things that Tim talked about. And so that's the purpose of this today, is really about educating. As Tim said, hopefully we'll get into a phase of advocating, which will not be in a public facility. We'll do those at different places where we have the ability to do that. But today we wanted to share the information. But again, my takeaway hopefully for you is that you'll take this and you'll share this with your quilting groups and your service clubs and your wherever you are in the community about what the potential is, because when we get to June, July, and August, we're going to need more folks to help get this message out. Not just the message, but why is it important? What does this mean for you? And especially, why is it worth $35 for every $100,000 homeowner that lives in this service district? Is that worth it? And those are the, I don't think we're going to have to convince the people in this room, but it's that targeted group of folks that we really need to say, this is an investment in our community that we feel like is really important. So that's why we're here, and I think Kathy's going to facilitate question and answers and tell us how to do it.
We will be glad to take some questions and go right ahead. If you stand up and speak nice and loud so everybody can hear you, since we don't have any mics.
Yeah, no worries. Hi, everybody. I'm Felica. I am with CSBC, the Colorado Statewide Caring Coalition. I'm part of the steering committee for the Alliance, and I really just needed a clarification on the phasing of the new levies over the 5 years. Because I couldn't write.
Yeah, what we've written into the service plan is that we would be asking for the voters to approve a 5 mil increase to be phased in year one, which would be 2024. Collections occur in April. It would be on 2023 property values. 2 mils assessed in year one. In year two, 2025, in April of 2025, 1 additional mill. And then in the spring of 2026, 2 additional mills for the 5. And you know, we've been fortunate enough to work with one of the big accounting firms in Denver, Clifton Larson Allen, to do our we put together a financial plan. I have to say, Kathy Hall did an unbelievable job of putting together a financial plan that made it easy for Clifton Larson Allen to certify our financials. So, you know, we're not working off just assumptions. We've got a solid financial estimate here. That phasing in would allow a special district, if created, to kind of smooth out the allocation of $60 million, really starting some money in 2024, but really rounding up to about $60 million minus expenses starting in 2025 and going forward. Because there's going to be some carryover from year one.
Make sense? Thank you.
Other questions? Yes. Would you step over to the mic? He's indicated. You can ask your question right there.
It helps us in terms of what we're trying to do with this, capturing this.
And you're going to be on camera here, so. Step right up to the mic.
What was the timeline again for the educating portion of the plan?
For the education versus the political
Here are
part.
the legal hurdles we have to get past. To get on a ballot, the county commissioners in both counties have to approve what we've submitted as a service plan. We're optimistic that they would because of the steps we've gone through with their attorneys and in revisions. I've said to this group, I defended a dissertation once upon a time. I've spent more time with Sarah on this service plan. We're in the 29th iteration or something. It started with Dick Lyons back there, who said, Tim, get ready. This is not going to be simple. Because Dick is one of the people who's leaned into this and donated his time and expertise. But we've come a long way. We've submitted a plan. The county commissioners have to say, yes, it serves all of the meets all the requirements for creating a unit of government. Then we have to go to the judge. Between the time the county commissioners would approve a plan and the time we get in front of a judge, we need to collect names on petitions to show the court that we have support. And then it's a judge who has to order the county clerk to put this on the ballot. If you think about timelines, right now we're pretty certain we're going to be in front of Weld County Commissioners on May 24th. We hope we're going to be in front of Boulder County Commissioners about the same time. And then with all deliberate speed, we'll petition the court. As long as we can get a decision made by late July or early August, once we're on the ballot, we've switched from education to campaigning. So in that time frame, right? Midsummer. Long answer, but anybody who's ever been in a setting like this with me knows you get way more than you ask for.
And we've tried to talk to him about that.
Yeah. Marty's our timekeeper right here. She's going. Yeah.
Other questions? Go right ahead. Can you step up?
Charles, go ask over there, and so we get that on the video.
Does a special district sunset?
We could submit the plan could have been submitted with a sunset clause. We did not do that. We didn't envision this is going to be a need that's going to be solved and over and wrapped up. Like some special districts are sunsetted because, take a fire district, right? You create a fire district so you can develop in an area where there's no firehouse. You don't need the special district once the capital investment on paying off the firehouse is that debt served. Now you can disband the district. We don't see this as that kind of a challenge. So no, there's no intent to dissolve or sunset the special district.
And could you describe the role and makeup of the board that would govern this?
We will be obligated when we go to the court with a ballot question, if we get that far, to also provide the names of potential board members. And I have to say, part of our conversation right now is focused seriously on who might be willing to serve on a board. Charles? You want to announce your candidacy? We're going to be obligated to submit a slate of 5 names. What we wrote into the service plan was a governing board of 5 people. We could have written in 7. In fact, in our first draft, one of our drafts, we envisioned a group of 7. Our council said you can always expand. A board could expand itself, but it can't shrink itself. So start with 5. If an elected board wants to go to 7, let them make that decision. We will submit, I hope, 5 names as part of our petition to the court. So there'll be 3 questions on a ballot, we hope. One would be, would the voters approve the creation of a special district? Second question, would you approve a 5 mil levy starting phased in 2-1-2? The third question would be, will you vote for this slate of electors? So we'll have the name of the electors. You can imagine the kinds of qualifications we'd like to see in the people who understand this business, but understand governance and policy and the relationship between governance and management and really the mission of this special district. I mentioned earlier to serve as a portfolio manager. There's no intent that we create a new institution that squeezes out or competes with providers. What we want to do is build a stronger cadre of providers and resource them the way they deserve to be resourced. Terms, the state statutes establish 4-year terms, 2-year, you can serve 2 terms. That first slate of electors, 2 of the 5 would serve for 2 years, 3 would serve for 4 years, and then you'd have a rotation. If that board wants to expand, they can do that. The challenge for a board, as you can imagine, if they're elected in the fall of 2023, and revenues start to arrive in April of 2024, there's a lot of time a group of newly elected folks are going to spend getting to know one another and figuring out how to move forward with recruitment of staff and trying to bring something to life, basically creating out of whole cloth a new unit of government. It would be really exciting.
I might suggest that if you know someone, if you think you would be able to convince them, or if you would like us to try and convince them to consider being on the board, we would be glad to hear those names. We're currently in the process of collecting a list of who we think in the service area, not just in Longmont, but in the entire service area, who might be a good board member. This is a big, challenging job, and we've put together some qualifications, and we are asking our own network management team to submit names, but if any of you have an idea or if any of you are interested.
We should be clear that the process is that anyone can self-nominate as long as they are a resident and a valid voter in the service district. What we're suggesting is that we see that this is an extremely important role, and so we're trying to pick names and present a slate. But anyone can self-nominate.
I should have one more, before we run out of time, I want to forget it, because I mentioned Dick Lyons back there. There are a couple of other people in the room who have just leaned into this in some pretty extraordinary ways. Gloria Higgins was one of the founders of the Denver Preschool Program, served as their first board chair, formed EPIC, a business coalition, a coalition of business leaders who really leaned in both Denver and then statewide, right? So people like Gloria I wonder from time to time, why is Gloria so invested in this? Because she cares, right, along with the other people who are involved in this process. So thank you for being here. Yeah.
Yes. So what safeguards do you have for directly impacted community to be involved in the process? I think, the board is great, and I think we have to recognize that it is a privileged position to hold, and that FFM providers are not going to be able to be on the board directing the work that impacts them. So is there a advisory committee component, or like how does that look like? And then what process do we take as community members to be engaged?
Why don't you feel
Want me to take that?
The answer is yes, and he'll tell you how.
Yes, so I think the biggest challenge that we've had in talking about this is, so what's in it for me, child care provider or mental health consultant or friend, family, neighbor provider? And what we've learned is that we want to give the board safeguards, but we also want to give them flexibility to be able to say, to address the needs of children with these areas. And so we've learned from our partners at the Denver Preschool Program, when things change, like the Universal Preschool Program comes out for 4-year-olds before the year you enter kindergarten. Well, that changes the funding stream for the Denver Preschool Program that just passed an initiative 10 years ago for children the year before they went to kindergarten. So we've learned from some of our folks around the state to make it broad enough, but to be able to give some safeguards. So yes, I think it's going to be critically important that one of the first things the board does is, assuming all 3 of these questions are answered, yes, service district, yes, mill levy, yes to the board's first responsibility is going to be to build out the infrastructure. That's probably going to be staff. There's going to need to be a CEO, a finance person, some program officers, and that's all in our finance plan. But another key critical piece is the community. Making sure that the community is involved in the percentages of, does 20% go to capacity building? Does 40% go to compensation? Does 10% go to friend, family, neighbor? Those are the questions that I think we can't answer at this point. What we want to say is that $60 million goes into the early childhood system, and we need to have safeguards to make sure that these initiatives are followed, leaving flexibility, but also ensuring that community is represented at every phase of that in advisory councils. We've done listening sessions even in our coalition to get to this point of what is the importance to a parent, what is the importance to a grandparent, what's the importance to a child care provider, school district, et cetera. We've done listening sessions, but I think that will be the key piece of the board's charge, is to hire the staff, build the community infrastructures through exactly what you're talking about, community engagement, whether that's listening sessions, advisory committees, subcommittees through the different maybe interest areas, et cetera. All those things will be critically important in the beginning of this.
We've identified in the service plan some suggested advisory groups. We don't have the authority to put those in place, but because it's in the service plan, it will be considered important for the board to take those things into account and to develop those advisory committees. And there's several different ones that are outlined, and they could add more depending on how they look to structure the whole process.
We actually listed, one of the exhibits in the plan listed the organizations that we believe need to be part of this. And the Statewide Parent Coalition, you wouldn't be surprised, is one of them. There are others. But like every key player in Boulder County is listed. And the expectation, it's the service plan. And to deviate very far from that, there is some accountability that would come into that with both with county commissioners and with the public and the provider community.
Once again, I'd like to ask you all to be sure that you've signed our sheet, and we'll keep you in contact if you've given us your email address. Thank you all. Thanks.
I'm Charles Cerns. My first impression is that I've been incredibly impressed with the dedication, the thoughtfulness, and the planning that you and the other groups of the planning committee have done. You've hung in there, you've thought this through, and really accomplished quite a bit. I'm interested in how decisions will be made as to what the coalition will do, how they'll spend the money. In my opinion, I think you would need to be a little more specific, not a little, a lot more specific about how the money would be spent. And I realize the issue around flexibility versus set in stone is a big one. But as a community member, I'd want a little more specificity as to how that money was going to be spent and what the anticipated outcomes would be. I think we need to continually say that this is a program for all children, no matter what their income, no matter where they live in the county or in the city, that it is for all children because it benefits all of us. And children that are taken care of are, as you said, a resource, they're a treasure, and they need our support and guidance. And the times are getting harder. And not only do teachers and schools need it, parents need it, as well as the children themselves. I think the business community should get on board because I think you can get higher quality employees if they know that there is child care available, and that child care is accessible all year long, before and after school, and it has both the quality and the care that children need. And I think sometimes we get real busy just trying to, house kids. That's not what we need. We need care, we need learning experiences, and if we could talk about that more, I think we'd be better off.
Thanks, John.